Doing a great job.
Yeah, New Jersey Bailey, we're more aggressive and not as friendly. So we have Nafisa presenting today, but a couple of announcements beforehand. Hopefully you all got the email for the FSNR assessments on the graduate student needs. Fill out that assessment. I think the poll for the SNR graduate student slash SRY t-shirt is out. Fill out that poll. And there's some events coming up. The crane trip, I believe, is going to be at the end of the month, so look out for emails for that. The signups will be pretty quick. And April 12th is our banquet. Please attend. The tickets are like $7 and you get a free meal, so that as well. Other than that, I think that's largely it. But yeah, I'm winding down, so just look out for the emails and like end of year events and enjoy spring break. So we have Nafisa here, a PhD candidate with Dr. What?
I'm not a candidate yet.
It was crossed out, so we could just go with that.
Okay.
I don't care. Don't worry about house. It says graduate research assistant.
Yeah.
Yes, a great TA in my writing course as well. And with Dr. Van Wormen and Dr. Schmidt. Nafisa is an environmental biologist originally from Bangladesh and currently a second-year PhD student at SNR. She specializes in applied ecology, and her research encompasses molecular diagnosis of emerging bacterial infections, zoonosis, root cause identification, and environmental risk factor analysis from poultry and live bird production. She's learning to use health extension in preventing antimicrobial resistance and other infectious diseases working together with Nebraska Extension and Nebraska One Health. And yeah, you want to take it away?
Hi everyone. I am quite nervous. I don't know why. You know the situation when you are at a conference, you don't know all these people, and you are like, yeah, this is the last time I'm meeting all of them probably. So I'm just going to do my presentation and get out. But when you are presenting in front of some of your familiar faces, then it's kind of hard because I'm going to meet all of these people again tomorrow, and if I mess up in some way, that is not going to be very good thing. So maybe that fright came into me and I'm sweating. So don't judge. I work with chickens. I call myself a chicken scientist. I don't know if that's funny or not, but that kind of keeps me motivated in a funny way, whatever. So yeah, as he said, I'm actually an environmental biochemist by profession. I have a bachelor's and master's in biochemistry and molecular biology back in Bangladesh. I'm doing my PhD in natural resources, specializing in applied ecology. Yeah. So I basically work with how infectious diseases transmit from chickens to environment and then to human. This is my presentation. This presentation is basically going to be an overview of my PhD research and the things and stuff that I'm going to do for my PhD project. And I titled this as Public Participation to Prevent Infectious Disease Outbreak from Backyard Poultry here in Nebraska. I will be working with 30 farmers from 3 different counties here in Nebraska, and mostly they are backyard poultry owner, not commercial poultry farmers. So let's start with the presentation. So broiler farms and other chicken farms are quite a big part of the US livestock farming and also US economy because we are the biggest consumers of chickens. So 98.9 pounds per capita broiler chicken is consumed in all over the United States. So you guys eat a lot of chicken every year. And then 25% are imported, mostly from the South American countries, but the rest, 75% are domestically produced. And only 5% are company owned, like in commercial company things. The rest are contractual farmers or the backyard independent farmers. And this 95% farmers are your producers, and they are kind of the controller of the quality of the meat that you are consuming. So this is a big community to work with. So I did not have the resources or the facilities or the courage to work with such a big population. So I chose our backyard independent farmers who treat their birds not as commercial stuff, but mostly as pets. So that's a big place for zoonosis, which is the transmission of viral or other infectious diseases from one species to another. Because you pet them, they're there in the backyard, they're with their kids, they're everywhere. So there is a very good chance for infectious disease transmission. So that's why I chose my specimen. Yeah, this is a diagram of how diseases can transmit from chickens to other organisms. They litter a lot, so through manure is a big thing for bacterial transmission. Also, my pointer is not working, so I'm going to be here. If you can see that they also can sneeze and stuff, so through their the viral infections can transmit from here. Influenza is a big thing this year. The H1N1, if you buy eggs every day, you can understand why the prices are so up because of influenza breakout this year. And also, these infectious diseases can also be spread out via wild migratory birds and other vectors like mouse, flies, and other arthropods. And they can carry these infectious viruses or bacteria to you. And you can also consume the meat, and while you are processing the meat, you can also get infected. So there are a lot of ways of transmission, and I'm just going to let you guys consume this diagram to understand it. And for environment, this waste material from chicken farms can get washed away to the nearest watershed and also can get contaminated with soil. If you're composting, so that's a big way for transmission, but there are ways to mitigate those, prevent this transmission. And most of our backyard chicken farmers do not have those sort of knowledge or trainings on how to manage those waste materials and how to manage their farms so that they don't get infected. And that is where my research is going to be, to let them to understand their knowledge gaps and then create some personalized training program to train them so that this does not happen. And this happens because of lack of clean millets and human-bird contact, knowledge gaps, as I said before, and also local support from other health personnel, because they have like 10 to 50 chickens in their backyard, and it's not a very big investment. So, and they are not doing it commercially. So most of the time they don't consult any veterinarians or any health officials. So they don't get involved in the national database for if there is anything associated with the farm. But there are certain breakouts that have been recorded so far. Definitely avian influenza. These are some diseases that I have mentioned. The rest are some bacterial diseases. Campylobacteriosis is a very big one. E. coli, you all know about E. coli, salmonella and stuff. And these are some evidences that I have pulled out that says that there are backyard outbreaks from backyard disease outbreaks. I use the hyperlink in here. I can see it. Yeah, I don't think it's going to work. I'll just keep it. It showed the database for USDA of how many disease outbreaks have happened so far from backyard poultry farms. It's a very good one. It kind of reminded me of the time of COVID. How many people have died, how many have been infected. Yeah. So with all this, the objective of my research would be, again, to understand the knowledge gap, why they are not participating and how they are not being able to manage the farms the way that they should. And then to understand the contribution of backyard poultry farming infectious disease outbreak, I'm going to do both a survey and a surveillance, means screening of their farms to show evidence that there might be a possibility for infectious disease outbreak from there. And then I would use all this data to develop, deliver, and assess impacts of educational program designing. And I'm going to design personalized training program for these farmers so that they can understand their part better. So these are also some other evidence. Oh my God, I went very heavy with evidence. So last year, I met this guy at a conference who said that from Iowa State, and they say that they are doing antimicrobial resistance breakout from backyard poultry surveillance, and they used 68 outbreaks, and they traced back 62 of them. Sorry, 86 outbreaks, and 62 of them were associated with backyard poultry farm. So that's a big one. Now talk about antimicrobial resistance. I've been mentioning it so many times, so I'll just give you a quick understanding of what it is. So if you were infected with some antibiotic or antiviral, bacterial or viral diseases, then you were using antibiotics and antiviral drugs to treat it. But these drugs are kind of creating resistance in the microorganism. And the next time when you are being infected with that resistant bacteria or virus, the same antibiotic is not going to treat you well, or might not treat you at all. And this situation is called antibiotic resistance, or here I just use antimicrobial resistance just for microbes, bacteria. So this is a very alarming situation, and chickens are small animals and they eat fresh most of the time. And they are a very good carrier for pathogens, and that's why they tend to get sick very fast, and that's why they need more treatment. And no matter how the farmers say that we don't use any medicine, we don't use antibiotics or stuff, some of these birds, grandparents or other stuff, other like predecessors, they were administered with antibiotics, and these have become a genetic things from that time, and it stays with them till now. So no matter how we try right now, it's there. So we have to be very careful about what we are consuming and how we are farming in terms of these things. And you cannot develop another antibiotic to treat the previous infection overnight, and it takes a lot of time and funds and manpower that is not available nowadays. And that's why we need to go for more preventive approaches so that we don't get infected with this sort of diseases. That's the whole agenda of my research, that let's prevent this before going to the doctors. And why I'm targeting the farmers? Because they are the key character in this situation. The way they're going to farm the animal, the animal is going to be healthy or not is solely going to depend on them. So they are, because they're, and it is important for them too, because they're the first line of contact. So they are more prone to get infected if there is a disease breakout. And they need to report cases, so there are like facilities available, and they can go there after the case is reported. If they don't report, we don't get to know, and we don't get to treat. Vaccination is a big thing. You need to get your birds treated as soon as they are infected, or before infection. Vaccination is a very good preventive measure. How to use drugs and medications. Sometimes they have some leftover like antibiotics from some previous treatment that they did not consume by the prescription, and there is a new breakout, and they think that, yeah, my chicken is sick, so I'm going to feed them the previous antibiotic that I have in my cabinet. That's not how you should do it. But some people actually does this, so there are evidences. So this is a big concern. That's why we need to educate them more. And in rural areas, houses are very like in a distance places, but in urban areas, the houses are in very close proximity. So if you are living in a city or a town situation and you have birds, your neighbors can also get sick from your birds. So that is one of the other things that we need to have concern about. And also there are children's, they're always there, they don't want to listen to you, so you have to like take care of your children and your chicken at the same time. So that is another topic that I'm concerned about. And these are like some basic things that they need to think about, like wash hands before and after, wear gloves and if you are cutting the birds or like cutting them or preparing the meat, and cover your wounds whenever you are doing it. Like if you have an open wound, then that means that you can get infected easily than if you don't have an open wound or a proper skin. So yeah, some stuff. And the consumers also need to be very careful about what we are consuming. You need to cook the meat properly. You don't do medium rare for chickens. And also try to buy from certified vendors. If you are buying it from a supermarket, read the packaging, if the bird was vaccinated or something. Then if you find anything wrong, like there might be some parasites. If you cut the chicken, there could be some parasites, like some worms and stuff inside the flesh. I don't know if you are unlucky enough to find it in your lifetime, but these things happen. So if you find this, talk to your nearest public health personnel to report that, and definitely try to clean your chopping board or where you have put your raw meat right after you are done with it. Make sure that everything is clean and you don't contaminate the utensils that you use for your chicken preparation with other things that you're going to use later without proper wash or proper disinfection methods. There are some organizations all over the world that are focusing on these sort of things, but with the fund cutting, things are not going very well in the health research and global health area. So this is one of the most important time for us to think about prevention, because there are a few chance for us to get the research done for after the infection. So we need to be more careful with the prevention. So this was all the background why it is needed and how it's important. And now I'm talking about solely for my project. So my project will be done in 3 different parts. The first part will be a survey to understand the knowledge gap of the farmers, how they are managing their farms, what they are doing wrong and what they're doing right. Probably they're doing something really good that they need to share with others, and probably they're doing something really bad that they need to stop or do something else. So we will do a survey, and we will, now we are at the point of developing our survey questionnaire. Our friends at the Near Center even are helping us with that. And then hopefully by the end of next week, we're going to be able to submit our IRB approval as we plan to start working from this summer. And after the survey is done, along with the survey, I'm going to collect environmental and bird samples from all these farms, and do some microbiological assay and some molecular biological testings to understand if there are any infections. I'm doing this for 2 reasons. One, so that if there is any trace of infection, I would let the farmers know that there is some. So you need to be careful, and also for surveillance for our national database. It is very important. And it would be a topic of discussion if we could find anything from there. And sorry, 2 went down and 3 went up, but it should have been the other 2. And the third part is development of personalized training program for these farmers. So the survey data that we would get, and also from the screening part, we're going to try to understand what are their behavioral situation, like why they are doing this, using the recent action approach of behavioral analysis. And then we are going to try to develop a certain curriculum and educational materials. That is, we are trying to do a partnership with USDA. If we are successful with this training and outreach program, we're going to let them have it to use it nationwide. So this is like ongoing. We are not certain when it's going to happen, but hopefully they're going to understand. And and we're also trying to do we're also going to do a post-training survey to like know that how much impact we could make with our outreach and education program, and what are they doing right now? What are the changes in their practices, in their farm management practices after this training? What are they going to do now? And the new things they have learned and stuff. And this is also going to give us an understanding of any other development that we need to do in our programming. And as I have mentioned about this recent action approach, this is going to be the primary focus of our survey data analysis. We're going to categorize our findings in behavioral beliefs and norms, and we're going to try to manipulate the behavioral understanding of these farmers so that they can learn, we can develop these training curriculums in a way that they can understand better. Because behavior is very important in terms of how you act, and your belief system is kind of the fuel that provokes you how you act. And this is one of my understanding from Mark's class that I took last spring, intrinsic and extrinsic behavior, and how these are important to know if you are working in a public relation research. And so we are going to do our outreach and extension program through training, and in the training there will be some we will try to do some demonstration of how to do this all of this in first hand. For training, I'm planning to do 4 different sessions, and I would try to involve a lot of experts in this field who are available, so that they might not understand a PhD student, but they could understand if someone like an older age and having a position in USDA or CDC come and talk to them. Hopefully we would be able to do that. And also we would go to their farms if there's any in-person training needed. We would try to demonstrate them how to do waste management and vaccination and other stuff too. You should eat them, don't pet them if they're infected. Here I'm going to talk about a case that, a situation, a research study that happened in Africa, in Ghana. This is kind of the similar thing for from a point that what I am doing. And I'm adding this to show you that this is very useful. We are not just doing this I have to do a project, so I'm going to do this. This has been done before in a different way, but they have found a very good outcome from it. So influenza was a big thing in Ghana at that time, and also antimicrobial resistant. And more than 10,000 poultry birds died in Ghana in a single season for avian influenza. And they use this social technical intervention, kind of what I am going to do to reduce antimicrobial resistance in agriculture and to mitigate infection. One village from Kenya was also incorporated in this, I guess. So FAO came together, Food and Agriculture Organization by the United Nations, and they started this Future Farmers School in there, and there was 2 schools set up, one in Ghana and one in Kenya, and they taught those farmers how to do alternative production practices that they were doing at that time, and then how to do production, thinking about keeping ecosystem in mind. And they taught about how farm-to-farm transmission could happen, and also sustainable approaches and the knowledge sharing and empowerment, everything. So this school also let you have a certificate and graduate after you were done with this training program. I don't know if I'll be able to do that, but that would be really cool that you have a certificate that I'm a certified farmer. So I'll try to do that. Yeah, this is really cool. And it was done by United Nations, so they didn't have any logistical or policy problem, but I would have to think about policy because it's a very big matter. If you are trying to do a research with the community. So that's another concern for me. Yeah, it resulted in self-reported education of antibiotic use, like how the farmers were administering antibiotics. They were consulting with the health workers there. And also it increased investment in farm infection than before. The farmers were invested in having more concern about their farming practices and medicine uses, and it resulted in prevention and control practices. And they also started using food baths, like the bath that you give to your shoes and feet after you get out of the farms. You can see here they're standing on ground. So if you are using those shoes coming out of the chicken coop in your house, then that's not sanitary. So yeah. And also they use PPE if there was an infection, and it enhanced engagement with animal health professionals so that the diseases could be more reported more, and also they could take good preventive measures. So yeah, that is all, and these are the takeaways from this presentation. And I would try to say this, that most of the scientists who work with community engagement and public engagement, this sort of area, from my own experience, some of them, not all of them, they go heavy with scientific terms and yeah, this is that, big jargons and stuff. They are chicken farmers. They don't know a lot of I know some of them, Becky Schumann, she's doing her master's here. She works with USDA and Nebraska Extension, and she knows all of this. Apart from some of these farmers, most of the farmers don't have any interest in scientific jargons. But when we are doing conducting a training session or an outreach session, people use a lot of this stuff, and I feel that we need to learn more. How, if we are working in extension and public engagement, we need to learn more about how to write lay scientific reports, and how to present our work in a way so that everyone could understand. I'm still struggling with this. I'm still learning. Hopefully, I will be able to achieve that at some point of my life. But yeah, we need to try to connect with the people's feelings and try not to go so hard on data and scientific facts, because not a lot of people cares about it, to be honest. So with that, I end my presentation. If you have any question, feel free to ask.
I have a couple questions.
Go ahead.
My first question is, did you already select farmers? And also, what sort of characteristics were you looking for in farms? Like, did you want a certain number of chickens? Were you looking for people who were doing egg production and meat production, or anything specific like that, or like where in city limits or anything? And then my second question was, because we have backyard chickens, so I love to stay up to date on your findings and information. So I wonder if you're gonna have like an email newsletter or anything like that.
Well, right now, I don't have any email newsletter or anything. But if I do, I'll definitely try to engage more farmers than my specimen, like the 30 or 40 farmers that I'm going to work with. But right now, as I started my project writing and my IRB stuff, I got an offer from the Nebraska state government that they got a fund from the federal government to work on kind of similar area of engaging the youth through training and outreach for infectious disease outbreak from backyard chicken. So now I had to redo all of my stuff to collaborate with them, and that's why it's taking longer than I expected to prepare everything. If that happens, then I hope that I will be able to incorporate more farmers that I'm originally doing. If your farm is in Nebraska, I hope that it won't matter right now. You would be able to get all the findings and everything. And it doesn't matter if you harvest chicken or like meat or egg or how many chickens you have. If you are not like a commercial farmer, you are just doing it out of hobby and it's on your backyard that is like with your house that you live in, you are qualified to be in this study. Just for statistical, to be easy with the statistical interpretation, we're now limiting it with 3 counties so that there are like, yeah, we had 3 counties. It looks well when we are presenting. Other than that, I didn't have any intention of limiting the study in just 30 people from 3 counties, but if you give me your email, I would, I have not started recruiting yet. I'll do that after I get my IRB, probably the end of next month. If you send me your email or your contact, I would definitely let you know if I'm recruiting in your area or not. If I do, then you'll be the first one to contact from that area.
Okay, cool, thank you.
Yep.
I too have chickens and I'm curious, how do you know that they're ill if they are? Is there any kind of something you should be looking for?
Yeah, the first thing I would say that how they behave, what they eat, and what they excrete. So if you have like 10 chickens, just for say, and you notice that one of the chickens is very playful, chickens are always playful, but they are not looking very well that day, they are not playing, going outside, they're just there doing this. And they're not eating well, and their poops are quite runny and not in the same color that they usually do, then you feel that there is some problem. So if mostly these chickens, they have E. coli in their stomach and salmonella, like they're there, you cannot do anything with it. But what happens if they eat something that is not supposed to be eaten? Then their guts become very sick. They're very small animal, they don't have that big of an immunity. So that bacterial load goes very high. Like the gut is not healthy for them. So E. coli and salmonella, they grow faster, and that makes the bird sick. That creates indigestion and other stuff. So their excretion, their feces becomes very runny and very smelly with salmonella. So if you find that salmonella has a very distinct smell, like rotten egg, kind of hydrogen sulfide smell. So if you smell that, you can like talk to your veterinarian or local public health official to let them know that your chicken sick. And hopefully, if you identify it faster, you would take that bird away from others so that others don't get infected, and take away the manure from there, that or the excretion or the poultry litter or the place that they were staying in the other night. Take it away, take useful measures so that other birds don't get associated with that waste material.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
I was wondering, like, I'm assuming that backyard chicken farmers or like the smaller guys have maybe more diversity in the breeds that they're raising. Are you gonna take into account any potential, maybe like disease resistance that's associated with these different breeds when you are looking at your samples, or do you think that could even be an influence?
Disease resistant, like especially if I talk about antimicrobial resistance, I don't have any evidence that I know of that is that they are species specific. So if if a salmonella is resistant to one chicken, it can be resistant to other chickens too, and it can be resistant to you too. So that is why it's a very big public health issue, because these chicken bacteria can also infect human, and the same level of resistance can be shown in human. So I don't think species is a big factor here, but if you have like other animals in like you have a couple of horses, goats, cows, then they can also sometimes get infected. The avian influenza is specifically for chickens. But there are like now as spring is coming, there will be a lot of birds and stuff, wild birds. And there are some rodents that may have visited your farms every now and then for some grains and stuff. They can also get infected and they can transmit those diseases to the wilderness. So this is a big like zoonosis, public health, environmental health situation. So that's why we need to take care of our chickens. Anyone else?
Here you sign in. Please. Thank you.
I finally saw it like a published article that would show that these are the same strain that the bird had.
Yeah.
But what other people have learned, what I don't
Pretty good, how about you?
Yeah, it's just, it's like my life. It's a little slower again.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
Yeah, someone they were talking about it in the meeting the other day, and everyone was complaining about it, and it's like, it says, well, we're trying to see things, but. Yeah. There's nothing. Yeah, so, you have PDFs on your.
it would matter. Like
Yeah,
if we wanted to
we're gonna
reserve
start
the person,
down on PDFs, and then we
you get
can-
associated with some infection,
Build
you
it
would- you
for
would get
accessibility.
That's good to know before I go to my. Yeah, so what do I do to make sure there's no accessibility?
There's a, if you go to ADA or AHA.
Oh, right. Oh, I don't compliance stuff.
Yeah, you know, it's like AHA, you know, you.
He's, oh, that's the environment, so I'll email you.
There's like a six documents.
Great job.
And PowerPoint, and then what, you know, then if you want the PDFs, there's a way, there's a button that you can click on options. It's supposed to help with accessibility.
Well, no, it's actually nice.
Sure.
This was on there too.
You're in a certification.
It's like.
Website.
Throw it in the.
Website lounge. But you have to go to
Well,
the menu and help.
Okay, force them on brush. He said, but it's my favorite.
Some of the people who come to the page get a little pop-up box that says, do you want to do the survey?
Got it.
It's only available on the homepage of the website.
So like off the EMS.
No, just so.
You don't need help?
Email.edu. Yeah, but if you get in there and you dismissed it, it's there before you can do it again. So if you come to do it, go ahead and fill it out, because they said they only had like 40 people and it's been over a
Sounds
month.
like they made it confusing.
Oh, they made it so that just no one can really respond.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, typical.
Yeah, so typical. Okay,
Oh, good to know.
yes, and tell your friends, tell everybody to fill it out.
Oh, whatever. Nice to meet you. Bye now.
Is it okay to post your seminar online?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, all right, stop sharing. Stop. It'll be later this afternoon that it'll be live.